Small Business Saturday.
Welcome to Small Business Saturdays video series with your host and my husband.
And my dad, Aaron Montgomery.
Join the conversation.
Let's talk some business.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing on Saturday morning here? Welcome to another edition of Small Business Saturdays, and I am Aaron Montgomery, and you can find me over at aaronmontgomery.info. Hope everybody's having a great day. It's a little rainy here in St. Louis. You get your Saturday morning weather update here, but it's supposed to warm up at least finally, so maybe a nicer day tomorrow on Sunday. My kiddo, Lewis, is into spring break. Got a fun week of spring break camp next week with his best friend. So looking forward to hearing all about that from him. Well, let's do this, guys. Should we just dive in? I got to make a couple of moves on my screen here. So bear with me for 1 second while I make some things happen. And yeah, let's talk about, oh, of course, I can't get there. Yeah. That'll work better. All right. So there's that. Working, loading, happening. Yes. Okay. So let's do this. Cannot get the mouse to show up where I want it to on the screen. If you checked out my Instagram account, Aaron M_STL, you will see where, where my setup looks like, how it's all set here. So I've kind of got a big screen in front of me and it split screens, and apparently not doing a very good job. I'm gonna have to get my wife back to be my producer again, but we'll figure all that out. Okay, so let's get this the way we want it. Make me small there. And oh boy, we'll get that out of the way. And okay, perfect. There we go. So today we are going to talk about metrics that are involved in measuring our company. The metrics, not too long, I think it was about 2 weeks ago or so, maybe even shorter, maybe even longer. We discussed kind of what metrics we should be measuring, and everybody had their metrics and what we talked about and all this other good stuff. And that was fantastic. I thought we got some good feedback there. I shared what I like, but I want to take that one step further here today. I want to talk about, when we're measuring those metrics, how to look at them and how to understand when you're measuring a metric that is centered around what's best for your customer, and when you're measuring a metric that's centered around what's best for your company. Not that one is necessarily worse than the other, but if you spend too much time on the company-centric metrics, basically what's in it for me kind of thing, you're going to potentially harm your customers. Now, not to say that, like I said, you don't want to not necessarily look at those things, but if we focus on some core metrics that relate to how our customers view our business and from the outside looking in kind of scenario, then we'll be able to adapt and change to the growing markets, changing markets, things like that. So this blog post, and I'm going to put a place where you find it. You can just go right there to aaronmontgomery.info/Seth, S-E-T-H. This is a blog post written by a gentleman named Seth Godin. And you can actually see, I think you could kind of see a link. There's a picture of him down at the bottom of that. Anyhow, as you can see, this blog post was back in 2014 when he posted it to his site. And that's about when I read it. At that time of my career, I definitely understood the relationship with the customer, and I understood how important it was. But I felt like, after the fact, in hindsight to the situation, I felt like I was just kind of giving that whole customers first kind of thing a bit more lip service than reality. We had the fancy sayings on the walls and had the discussions about it, but I don't think we ever really truly lived it prior to this. So about 2013, a friend of mine and I were kind of tasked with running a distribution company. And he and I both actually read this blog post together. I invite you to go read it again. You can check it out. I just made a quick link for it here, aaronmontgomery.info/Seth. You can check that out and read the full thing. But this was quote out of it that I thought was very interesting. The thing is, the blog talks about him trying to get warranty service on his HP printer. And he indicated that the thing is, a customer is never out of warranty, even if his product is. So in the decorating world, that could be, maybe it was the customer's fault because they signed off on the proof, or, didn't give you the right information and stuff like that. But what's the value of that customer? What's the lifetime value of that customer to you? Is it worth beating them up over, or is it worth working with them and trying to find some middle ground? Hey, I know you signed off on the proof, so maybe we can split the cost of a redo, or maybe, I'll just do it at the cost of the garments, or something along those lines. So that's kind of the thrust of this. So back to my story. We read this blog post. We kind of said, you know what, we really need to actually focus on this stuff and actually live it and see how that goes. Yes, we've got the sayings. Yes, we've got the stuff on the wall. But what about our policies? What about the things that we do in the business? So, we made a lot of changes. We really kind of stepped up our game with the free freight and flat rate shipping, easy returns, no minimums, all sorts of things that, the customers were asking us for, and we just weren't listening. So we did that. By 2015, it was the most profitable that company ever was. The problem came down to the fact that a big chunk of the metrics we were actually looking at were metrics that were related to what was the exact best interest of the company. So every order was scrutinized to go, did we make a profit on that order? And if we didn't, the person who entered the order was questioned about it. And we had to figure out ways to then make changes to the policies to make sure that we never lost money on an order again. Not to actually really truly understand the story behind the reason why that happened. Tried to dig in and prove to the owner of the company that, hey, I get that we lost a little bit of money on this first order, but if you look at it as a whole, these companies that have this first order that doesn't really make a ton of sense for us, look at their lifetime value, look at further out. But that just wasn't able to kind of get through. So by 2016, things had changed quite drastically. We kind of went away from some of those things that we felt like the customers were asking for. I was frustrated. The staff was frustrated because they no longer were able to really help. They just had to be the bad guys and say, sorry, this is the way that it is. This is our company policy. Why didn't you read it? Those kinds of things. It was a mess. So I left 2016 and here I am now. So let's move on here and get into looking at some of these things. And I'm going to actually take myself off the screen here so you guys can see the whole thing. So let's talk about the metrics then, the metrics that you want to be looking at and kind of compare and contrast the two. So talked about using the policies as a way to protect ourselves. And you also have to understand that, if you're company driven in your metrics, that's totally fine. And that's who you are. But guess what? You're probably also going to attract those customers that are driven towards what the metrics that are to them most important. Lowest price. Will you go down in price if I beg you a ton? If I tell you a good story and say, I'm going to buy 10,000 of these things, but I need one, will you drop your price? Those kinds of customers that are also metric driven and not really value driven. So to me, I would rather turn away business. I'd rather say, I'm sorry, that's not what we do. I'd rather say, I'm sorry, that is our best price. This is the pricing we have online. This is why we think our prices are good. I don't care about XYZ company and their price. I would welcome you. That their price does sound fantastic. I would welcome you to buy that from them, because I trust the value that I bring to the table. I trust that I am going to provide you more than just what that price tag is, and go from there. So let's start off with a metric driven type thing. So This is when you're acquiring your customers. You're looking at things like, well, you're looking at cost per new lead. So how much does it cost me to find the lead? How much does the source of that lead cost me? So maybe it's a trade show and it's $30,000 and I'm getting 100 leads. And what's the lowest cost way for me to get leads? It's all about the quantity, not the quality. And so that would be a cost saving kind of metric that you would look at as a company when you're company focused. Well, if you're customer focused, what you should instead look at is what your word of mouth, which is WOM, that's what it stands for, word of mouth lead generated. How many of the leads that you are getting are coming from word of mouth? I myself like to set up my entire marketing strategy around that word of mouth. The other stuff can bring in some people, but if you're not supported by other customers, your other customers telling other people about it, it's a hard sell. It turns into a sale process where you really have to work through and go through the long process. So why not look at how many of our leads are coming from word of mouth, and then work on ways to increase and encourage and gain more qualified referrals. So you have to have a real clear definition of what you're doing and what you want to be doing, and the types of customers that you want to be bringing in. That way, when people are describing your company, they can describe you in such a way that they are going to bring other customers that you want to be doing business with. They're not going to be driving those cost only type customers to you if that's not what you want, or whatever. So think about ways that you can improve your word of mouth marketing, and actually have a plan around that, have a process. I think I've talked about it on this show, maybe not, but there's a book called Talk Triggers by Jay Baer, and I can't remember his co-author's name right now. Baer is his last name, called Talk Triggers. Excellent read. I would highly recommend grabbing it, because it basically talks about setting up your marketing and having a plan around the word of mouth section of your business. All right. So there's first. Now let's talk about, as we've taken the order. So we've taken the order, a metric that I kind of explained a little bit already is looking at profit per order and basing your success or failure on one-time orders, and eliminating all of the orders that aren't as profitable as you'd like them to be. So as I mentioned, that kind of gets away from the bigger story, the bigger picture of what is the lifetime value of that customer. So when we flip the switch, then we talk about the CLV, the customer lifetime value, and what that means to you as a business. So within that customer, here's what that customer lifetime value means. So we want to basically take a look at our highest quality customers, the customers we love doing business with, the customers that, our reason why, the reason why we do this every day, and not just for the money, but, Will, thank you. Shiny object. You guys know that is me, but Will had a great comment, because, following up on the Talk Triggers book. I have not heard of this one. I'm going to check this one out today. Audibles, I'm heading your way after this. Will Hankey from Red Canoe Media. We've had him on this program before talking about SEO. Great guy, and great suggestion. Referral Engine, another good book on word of mouth. Thank you, Will. Okay. So back to what I was talking about, customer lifetime value. All right. So we're talking about those customers that we really love doing business with, the ones we want to do more business of. And then what we want to do is we basically have to do some prediction. We have to go, okay, this customer bought this, did this, whatever. That's great. And that's a good start. But let's try to understand if that is a good customer, like the other good customers that I've already got, or the types of customers that I want. How often do those good customers do business with me? Is it every 3 months? Is it every month? Is it every year? How often do they do business with me? Once I've figured that out, then I also want to go, and then how long do my customers stay around for? Do I churn customers all the time and getting 30 new customers a day, but losing 50? How does that work for you? Hopefully you're getting new customers on the regular, but keeping and just growing and adding to them. So what's your churn? It would be the way to look at that. How often do you lose customers? And maybe you lose a customer just because they're not in the market for what you have anymore. Their life has changed. Something has changed. They've moved on. Company went out of business if you're doing B2B sales or something like that. And that's all part of it. So you kind of do your best to figure, predict, look into that crystal ball, and then you put a figure on and on the customer lifetime value. And that way, when you're looking at that as a metric, then you're really thinking about ways that you can increase that value. So either you're going to increase that value by getting them to spend money with you more often. You're going to increase that value by looking at ways to keep them with you longer. You're going to be looking at things that are in the best interest of your customers to make them happy and keep them around longer. So that customer lifetime value, I think that's one of my favorite metrics to measure and really focus on, because the whole point of measuring metrics is to make changes and make sure your company is heading in the right direction. So if you're thinking about the customer lifetime value, you're then thinking about ways that you can increase that and win-win for everybody. So here we go. So Will makes a good point, and me too, Will. It's really, and honestly, I was one of those people that didn't quite understand that. So being able to finally pull my head out, so to speak, and do that. Will says, I'm always blown away by how many business owners don't know their ACLV, which is average customer lifetime value. Totally. And Will says, such an important metric when doing basically any advertising. Absolutely. If it's not going to increase your customer lifetime value and bring in those people, then don't do it. So thank you for the info and the support there, Will. Okay, let's keep this going. I want to get you out of here and off to your Saturday for sure. So now we've made the sale. Now we've, whatever we've done and we've kind of gotten. So now we're into that next level of our business. So we brought in new leads, we made the sale. Now we have to do the support, the service, the answering the questions and things like that. So a company driven metric is how much does it cost for each support ticket that we close? Basically meaning let's ride our customer support team to a point where their whole goal is to get off the phone as quickly as they can, because there's cost involved with that. We need to be able to answer more calls. Well, first and foremost, if you're answering a lot of calls and you have to answer more calls, then you may want to turn around and look at why you're getting so many calls to begin with. So there's your first problem. But if your focus is again on that cost, what it costs you to do that and what it costs you to support your customers, back to what Mr. Godin said, just because the product may be out of warranty, just because maybe they didn't wash the shirts the right way or whatever, that doesn't mean that the value of that customer is gone. What is it that you do to make things right? And yes, you are going to get some bad apples. And yes, you're going to have to just suck it up and deal with it and take a hit and deal with somebody that's a little bit unreasonable. But you know what? Take that hit, suck it up, move on, and then don't do business with those people anymore. Make it in such a way where you're attracting the right people that have the same values that you do. So that way, when you're doing business with them and something goes wrong, it's a partnership. You're working together to solve them. So what I would rather look at, and this is actually a copyrighted metric that you can go and get the formula for, but it's called the Net Promoter Score. And that Net Promoter Score is basically a fancy way of saying, would you tell your friends about doing business with me? Would you tell your friends and family about doing business with me? How likely is it that you would? So the question that you ask, the specific question that you ask, and then you give them a scale between 0 to 10, and then use those numbers to figure out the metric. And that's where the copyrighted scientific kind of formula comes in, is how likely is it that you would recommend my company to a friend or colleague? So if that's the metric that you're measuring, think about that. If that metric is low, what do you need to, then it's the work to follow that up to what do you need to do to improve it? Because honestly, if you're about the customer, if you're about the word of mouth marketing, which is fantastic in a way that guess what? It's free. if somebody else tells somebody else about your business, that costs you nothing other than doing the right thing. So if that's not the best guerrilla marketing there is, or free marketing or whatever it is that you want to put around that, then I'm doing something wrong. But all of the other marketing and things that you do are just boosted by that word of mouth marketing, just boosted by, so if people are recommending you a lot, guess what? Your SEO is going to be, and Will can hopefully back me up on this, your SEO is going to be a lot easier to do because Google's going, hey, this person's getting recommended by a lot of people. We need to get them moved up on the list. Or Facebook, you're going to show up more when you're more engaged and you have more things happening and more people talking about your business. You don't have to pay for a Facebook ad when other people are talking about it and getting it out on their feed. So that net promoter score is kind of that thing, that place to start and go, are people willing to recommend me? And if they're not, if they don't fall in that top category, that 8, 9, 10 category enough, then you got to go back and look at what you need to do to change some things. So there we go. That's kind of my take there on those metrics and why. And it really boils down to what Mr. Godin says in the blog of don't break the chain, meaning we don't want to give our customers a reason to look for alternatives. If they've got a bond with you, they're going to take the easy route and they're going to keep doing business with you. If you've done business with them, they feel like they've gotten value from you, and you haven't given them a reason to go look somewhere else. And sometimes it's a hard thing to do, but really at the end of the day, it really should be the easiest thing to do, to not break that bond with your customer, to not give them a reason to do the right thing, help them out, fill their needs, take care of them, and they'll just keep coming back. That's who we are as humans. We like the same things to happen over and over again because they make us feel good. So are you making your customers feel good? The whole point of this exercise is to maintain our business focus on the customer so that we don't lose sight of their needs. So we want to use, those kind of metrics, the ones on the right that we talked about there, as ways to kind of understand the user experience and when we need to make changes to it. If you go back and read the blog, in the blog, Seth Godin says, when you have happy customers, they spend, sorry, that's what I said. I said, when you have happy customers, they spend more money. But Mr. Godin notes that every customer is also a media outlet today. Every customer can go and say, hey, I had a terrible experience at, heck, here we go. Here's a perfect example for you. I had a terrible experience last night at dinner, a local place called Francesca's. It took hours. I'm not sure what was going on. The owner seemed a little bit out of it. Maybe, I don't even know if he was drunk, but he was yelling at his staff. One of the waitresses was basically in tears. So however many people are watching that video have now heard about that experience of Francesco's in St. Peters, Missouri. We loved it there. We loved the food, but he gave us a reason to go somewhere else. So there we go. Just don't break the chain. How's that? All right, let me get back on the camera screen here. Kind of finally to wrap it up here. Let me go to one more thing there. If you want to reach out to me, there's my email address up there. What do people say you do? What is it that they say you do? And what is the real experience for them? That's what all this is about. I think that's what you should be measuring, is trying to figure out ways to understand what your customer is seeing about your business, not what you think is your business is supposed to look like. Because if you don't know what your customers are seeing and feeling and saying about you behind your back, so to speak, or maybe right to your face, or maybe out on Facebook, it's going to be an uphill struggle and you're not going to be successful. But it's okay if you have had those struggles. We're going to celebrate those failures as learning opportunities to then go back to what we just talked about here and start making those changes. Start thinking about your customers differently. Stop complaining about them. Start loving them, that kind of thing. So there we go. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and hopefully you got some good information out of that. Thank you very much to Will for his comments and jumping in with me here today. And We will talk to you guys next week. Have a great Saturday.